Tijuana.
Tijuana.
Tijuana
Tijuana is innovation and manufacturing at a world-class level.
is skilled and high-tech industrial labor.
Is San Diego's business and economic partner.
Is the gateway to a smarter border. Is a dynamic destination and our gateway to Mexico.
Is diverse and inclusive.
Is binational and bicultural.
Is a hub of art and cultural innovation.
Is surprising, a place that will open your eyes.
Is a treasure trove of wonderful food, beer, and wine.
Is part of San Diego's binational community.
Is social innovation and philanthropy.
Is San Diego's innovative, dynamic, and vibrant collaborator.
Tijuana is an open and plural society, a cluster of many communities that welcomes everyone.
Tijuana is our friend, our neighbor, and our partner.
Tijuana.
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 Tijuana is the future.
Tijuana.
Tijuana.
Tijuana is innovation and manufacturing at a world-class level.
Is skilled and high-tech industrial labor.
Is San Diego's business and economic partner.
Is the gateway to a smarter border. Is a dynamic destination and our gateway to Mexico.
Is diverse and inclusive.
Is binational and bicultural.
Is a hub of art and cultural innovation.
Is surprising, a place that will open your eyes.
Is a treasure trove of wonderful food, beer, and wine.
Is part of San Diego's binational community.
Is social innovation and philanthropy.
Is San Diego's innovative, dynamic, and vibrant collaborator.
Tijuana is an open and plural society, a cluster of many communities that welcomes everyone.
Tijuana is our friend, our neighbor, and our partner.
Tijuana.
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 Tijuana is the future.
Hello, everyone. Well, we are so happy to be here today on this A Tiempo y Bien, on this binational season. And we are so happy to have you, Mary. Mary Walshok, she is an institution, let me tell you, in border issues and technology and entrepreneurship. So how are you, Mary?
I'm very well, thank you. Very, very happy to be joining you and other friends today.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Jose Galicot, President and founder of Tijuana Innovadora.
Hola a todos. I'm very happy to be with Mary. I don't know anybody that doesn't love Mary. So we're her fan club.
We are. And remember, thank you for everyone that is joining us on this Facebook page. We're going to be ready to read your questions, and feel free to write it down, and we're going to read it to Mary. And I'm just going to give you a short bio because her curriculum is huge. So I'm going to try to share a little bit, and we're going to discover Mary during our conversation. So she is member of the advisory board of Finister Partners, LLC. She is responsible for a large number of publicly focused academic initiatives, including university extension, summer sessions, UCSD TB, UCTB, and UCSD Connect, among others. She also serves as an adjunct professor on the Department of Sociology at UCSD. She has been named First Class Cavalry Officer of the Royal Order of the Polar Star by King Carl XVI, Gustav of Sweden, in recognition of her important contribution to the development of entrepreneurship in Sweden. We should give you this prize too, Mary.
Oh, you have. I'm on the Walk of Fame.
Adelante, José Galicot.
Okay, Mary, you have been in this area. You have seen all the changes. You love this area. You're one of the builders of the area. How do you find what we are seeing today in the region and with what we saw 20, 30 years ago?
So, Don Jose, you may not know, but my parents were Swedish. They were born and raised in Sweden. They met in the United States and married right before the United States got into World War II. And so they became passionate Americans. And because I grew up in California, they also loved Mexico before it was fashionable. So my first encounter with Mexico was in 1956, when I was just 13, 14 years old. My father packed us in his big Oldsmobile, and we drove all the way through the country, through Guadalajara and down to Mexico City, and back through the central areas. And they encouraged me to learn Spanish. And their closest friends, I grew up in Palm Springs, were the mariachi, the Guadalajara boys, who played at was then a very famous nightclub. And they were in a number of 1950s movies. I wanted to tell you that because I think to work as you and I have done over the last 40 plus years in this region, you have to be in love with it. And it's thanks to my parents and my early childhood that for me, Tijuana, the border, Mexico was always a romantic and promising place, not a dangerous or scary place. So I wanted you personally to know that, because I don't think I've ever told you that. So after I got my PhD and was hired by UC San Diego to be the dean of the extension division, now 20 years after that first trip with my father to Mexico City, it's the 1776 anniversary of the United States, right? 1976. And a very enlightened group of people, which included Lucy Calais, whose husband was the consul general in Tijuana, Admiral Brute Krulak, Major General Brute Krulak, Marine Corps, the editor of the newspaper, and a number of civic-minded San Diegans came together and said, we're older than the United States. Our region has 250 years of history, and we should be celebrating the San Diego-Tijuana region. So I found myself in my early 30s working with Lucy and these men and women to create a year-long program called La Frontera. And we had lectures by historians and novelists. We had dinners and music, and many, many leaders from both sides of the border participated in those events. I think it's important for me to mark 56 and 76, because here we are in 23, and we've come so far, and yet we still have so far to go. And I think the advantage of age is you can see the progress that has been made, and in small steps. And so you become hopeful, optimistic, but also very pragmatic about how to continue to build a future. So I'm trying to introduce myself and my experience. After that fabulous celebration of our 250th anniversary, within a few years, this group of people and a group of leaders from Tijuana, which included many familiar names, Fimbres, Luteroth, Enrique Mier Terán, came together to create something called the San Diego Dialogue, which was the first sort of official binational organization in which the agenda was defined not by the US side, not by the Mexican side, but together. And that, I believe, was a tipping point in our shared history, because as you know, on that we created after that we created the Smart Border Coalition, and now we have the World Design Capital binational celebration to look forward to. And in the meantime, we have CBX, we have Century, we have much more shared arts and culture than we did in 56 or 76 or 96. And clearly, we have an intertwined economy that is entrepreneurial, global, and technology-based. So that's the foundation that makes me optimistic. And I don't know if I'm really answering your question. If you want me to go on and say what I think the future holds, I'd be happy to do that. But you may want to comment or respond or ask me something different.
Yes, Mary, every meeting, every board that we participate as binationals, you are there.
Yes.
And all the time, your proposal is, let's do the data as binationals.
Yes, yes.
We do not have 15 universities in Tijuana or 16 in San Diego. We have 30 something.
Yes.
So because most of the people that is listening to this webinar, maybe they don't know what's the educational environment in San Diego. Maybe you can share some of this so they could imagine how it is.
So both San Diego and Tijuana have come of age in my lifetime when it comes to education, research institutions, and with that, innovative companies, right? And entrepreneurial companies and advanced manufacturing opportunities. So that it's really been since the 1960s when the federal government and the state government decided to invest significant sums of money in California and the United States in building new universities, but also community colleges, state universities, and large research universities with medical schools and schools of engineering. And there was great resistance. I wrote a book about this, which Stanford University Press published. There was great resistance to building a University of California campus in San Diego in the 1950s after World War II. But there were so many particularly defense countries, but also research and activity in the health sciences area, and lots of available land. I mean, that whole, what today is the Torrey Pines Mesa, was riding trails and Boy Scout camps and the golf course and a single little, lane from the Del Mar racetrack down to, Caliente. And so it was a different landscape and lots of Navy and military people. So to understand both our regions, because I think there's a similar history in Tijuana, right? The growth of these universities and colleges since the 1950s and 60s mean that we have just in San Diego, over 300,000 students in different forms of higher education today. When we were much smaller in the old days, but most students went to UCLA or they went elsewhere. And I think the same is true with CETIS, with UNAM, with Iberoamericana. You had a parallel growth. So what I think has happened in both regions through education and innovation is we've created a pipeline of talent. I mean, the engineering talent coming out of the border region is phenomenal. It's as it is at Cal State San Marcos and San Diego State and UCSD. We have great business schools, right? And we have a focus on innovation and incubators and applying advanced technology to solving health problems or to manufacturing health devices. And so I've been the witness in my 50 years here to the growth of the 7 million population region, which can compete globally because of all the talent it has, in part because all of the universities and colleges and supports, that have evolved here and developed here over the last 60 years.
Mary, you are also a mother and grandmother.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about your family. We want to know you personally a little bit more.
Yes, and this is in that wonderful book that you and Malin sponsored, El Tercer País, because my husband was a professor at San Diego State and I was at UCSD, and there was a wonderful private school midway between the two universities in Mission Hills called Francis Parker School. So our only son went to school there, and one of his best friends was Charles Walter Mead, Yolanda Walter Mead's son. So from the time he was 9, 10, 11, I was driving him in my station wagon down to the Walter Mead's house for birthday parties or overnight weekends. And of course, you and I know today that is the residence of the U.S. Consul General. So early on in our social life, we participated in a binational community. I was also an opera buff. Who was one of the biggest opera buffs in Tijuana 25, 40 years ago? Enrique Mier y Tirán. I would run into him in London. I would run into him in New York. And of course, I'd run into him at the San Diego Opera. And eventually his daughter actually worked for us at UCSD. So socially, we were two professors, but we made a choice about schooling. And my husband, who is very, very interested, as I am, in economic growth and the political and historical character of cities, we both found the binational reason intellectually interesting. But not in a disengaged way, if you understand what I'm saying. We both, and he taught at the campus in Mexicali that San Diego State opened 4 years. And after his death, we established a scholarship in binational public policy at San Diego State in his name. So there's been this family connection, and my connection, as I shared with you, was after the success of the sort of 1976 celebration, more and more people said, we can't stop talking together. We can't stop exploring futures together. And in the early 1990s, it took about a decade, we discovered a wonderful man at UCSD, a professor by the name of Chuck Nathanson. And he came to work with me, and we were able, with the help of people like you and Yolanda Walter Mead and others, to convene early groups to discuss our shared future. And we had private investors, important Mexican families invested, important San Diego families and foundations invested, eventually Rockefeller, Ford, Hewlett, Irvine invested, all because they believed in the promise of this kind of collaborative work, exploring economic futures, identifying policy barriers, cultural barriers. And you may or may not remember that the very first study of who crosses the border was led by Chuck Nathanson with students from, I think, UNAM and UCSD, interviewing people who cross the border. And we produced a report that it was friends and family and shoppers and people who had jobs on both sides of the border. It got into the LA Times, it got into the New York Times. And I think that redoubled everybody's commitment to, we're doing something important. We're going to change attitudes and ideas. And back to Claudia's point, we're going to build a database, a knowledge base. So it doesn't matter what your politics are in Mexico or what your politics are in the United States. The realities of the society and of family life and of the economy are going to be fact-based, and they're going to demonstrate that we are two countries, two regions, one economy.
Mary, thank you for your optimism. I love the optimism that you always share, and Mr. Gallico, and Melin. But let me say that I am not optimist. I'm optimalist, and I just create that word. And because of that, I would like you to share which ones are the barriers that you have been finding through your way, because you always are surrounded by people that share your vision. But yes, I'm sure that sometimes you have to, convince, negotiate, and etc. about those barriers. No, tell us about that in education.
I spend time on that a great deal. The lack of knowledge about our shared history, as well as the characteristics of Mexican businesses and Mexican universities, mean that we have continued stereotypes. So Mexico inappropriately is seen as a place of poor people seeking jobs in the north and high levels of corruption. And it's very, very hard. I was just with a group of friends from Texas just a couple of days ago. And you may know him, Don Jose, San Marasco Land Grant Development. He built the Plaza de Americas. And now he's doing a big, big project in Brownsville at the border. And he and we were together for 3 hours. And he said it's so hard to get over the stereotypes of Mexico's position in the world and the character of its economy and its population. And I think that's a huge barrier. So for me, just quick, I have a couple of others. And the second one is uneducated, which is also incorrect, right? And third, not as sophisticated as we are. When you and I know across Mexico, Monterrey, Tijuana, we have global companies engaging with Mexican companies. So when I say to you, data really matters to me, it's because I don't know how we change stereotypes, but data helps. However, I have been very excited about what the recent Consul General, Carlos Gutierrez, was doing in San Diego to promote film, music, lectures, shared celebrations. And for me, and I say this to Don Jose as well as to you, the San Diego Opera's decision to produce the wonderful opera about Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera became a reason to do lectures and show films and bring musical groups around the city. And we had crowds. And it was empowering, and it was full of respect and affection for Mexican culture, anchored in history. So I think for me, a very big barrier is cultural understanding and mutual respect. But there is a second barrier, and that is we live in a border region, lots of entrepreneurs on both sides of the border. But I think the American characteristic, United States characteristic, I can solve this problem. I'm an individual. I'm going to move forward. Damn the government. Malin Burnham standing up, a Republican standing up in front of 400 people and say, tear down that wall, is very American. I do not think that same kind of individualism and risk taking, with the exception of my good friend on the screen here tonight, is the Mexican character. So it's harder to get people to make strong statements or put their money where their mouth is, if you understand what I'm saying. And this is cultural also, but it's a different dimension of culture. And so when we talk about co-creating and co-developing programs and co-financing programs, those cultural barriers are there too, not just in the general public's perception. But the third thing, I think, and that's why I'm so excited about El Tercer País, about the World Design Capital, and about the whole notion of characterizing our region as a 7 million person plus marketplace economy. You have to deal with us because we're big and we're important. I think there are a lot of people that still don't have the confidence to say that. Don Jose, you haven't. I haven't. Malin hasn't. You know, Todd Gloria hasn't. Your mayor hasn't. It's sort of, damn it, stop treating us like the cul-de-sac of the United States or the cul-de-sac of Mexico. We are a dynamic hub, perfectly situated between Asia and Europe, and we need to be taken seriously. So I think that's a third barrier that we need more business and government leadership to have that kind of, what my Jewish husband always called chutzpah. We need a little more chutzpah in the region.
Okay. Mary, Claudia is in a special place now, and she told us that she's working there. The name is in the street market. That building, that special place, you developed it. Could you tell us about it?
Thank you so much for asking. I'm now retired, but the last 5 years of my life at UCSD, I spent over 50% of my time building that. And I had the support of the chancellor. So this is very important too. You know, I was able to get it built, but he had to be the one to say, yes, we're going to build it. He had to be the one to go to the regions and say, yes, we need to build this. And we also together walked through downtown San Diego, and we arrived at a very derelict site on the corner of Park and Market, surrounded by a wire fence and gravel, you know, it was like a parking lot. But guess what? The trolley that originates in San Isidro went right by that spot, and within 2 years' time was going to go straight up to UC San Diego. And immediately we said, this can be a spine, right, for this entire region. Now, clearly, there's lots of great stuff happening further south in Baja. There's lots of great stuff happening further north than UCSD. But both symbolically and in practical terms, a trolley that every 12 minutes, right, is going back and forth, that captured everybody's imagination. So we chose the site knowing that, one, it connected Mexico and, well, Tijuana and La Jolla, let's be candid, in ways that had never been connected before, but also it represented access to diverse students and to employees who could work in the university's hospital, work at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography. So it was just an epiphany, right? If we could build a university presence. So that was the first right decision we made. The second decision we made in contrast to many universities, Don Jose, around the world, is this wasn't going to be a downtown business school, right? Or a downtown school of public health, or a downtown art gallery, or a downtown extension school, continuing education. It was going to be everything UCSD is. We wanted to design the building to express the full range of teaching, research, and community engagement that represents a great university like UC San Diego. So the building has a restaurant, it has a theater, it had for music, and we had a fabulous opera performance. Again, made all the newspapers. Opera Neo did a Handel opera that was beautifully produced. It's a conference and meeting space, right, for business groups. It's a floor of classrooms with computers. And on the fourth floor, it's a think tank and maybe a do tank too, with lots of tenants like the Economic Development Corporation, the Burnham Center for Community Advancement, the San Diego Workforce Partnership. SETI's has an office next to my office on the fourth floor. So there is this, it's only 60,000 square feet, and yet it is the university in a microcosm. And it's open to community groups. So it's sort of the living room, I say, of the binational region, because it's easy to get to from the south, easy to get to from the north. US-Mexico Studies is there. We're doing urban studies classes, design lab classes. So it's become a kind of cultural and educational hub that is 21st century. It's not a 20th century urban presence. And that's one of the reasons, Claudia, I'm optimistic, because I see the traffic moving in and out, and I see that it makes it easy for people to connect and interact in a way it was not before there was such a facility.
And also here's the connect.
Yes,
that you already founded and participate and still participating, which is a wonderful idea to make the link between the university, technology, business, and entrepreneurship. I mean, that's a dream,
It's a dream, and they're right, and it's in the building, and we have wonderful Rebecca Bernal, who's working on all sorts of cross-border and inclusive economic development initiatives. And of course, the World Design Center is located there. The American Institute of Architects has their offices there. The Design Lab from UCSD, Urban Studies, as I said, US-Mexico Studies. So you have a lot of the intellectual capital, right, and the talent that is thinking about doing research on teaching about our broader regional futures, challenges and opportunities, because there are challenges, all co-located. So Claudia, in the old days, you and I couldn't go to the men's room, right, where a lot of the business got done. But now you can go to the ladies' room, or you come up to the coffee machine, and everybody connects.
I made a mistake. Mary, so what we know, because Sandax shared with us, our dearest Hector Vanegas, that during COVID, there were 160,000 San Diegans crossing the border from Tijuana, going back and forth. So now we know that 80% of the people that is crossing the border are San Diegans, they're like living in Tijuana. So I would like you to share with our attendees, the people that is hearing this, how is it growing, the Mexican ancestry population in the university? I know that you are retired right now, but how have been growing during your time there?
During my lifetime, it's grown significantly, but I want to be very honest with you. I received a report today that Hispanic gains in terms of graduating are not as high as everyone had hoped. So Hispanic, by which I mean, U.S. Mexican origin students who go into the University of California finish in smaller percentages than other ethnic groups. They do best in the Cal State University system, San Diego State, San Jose State University, which are excellent schools. And so we've still got a long way to go. And I think it has a lot to do with what I know Innovadora and others have been interested in, which is the STEM pipeline, right? As more and more careers and areas of study require deep knowledge of math, of science, of technology, there are inequities in the school systems in terms of who's getting access to that knowledge and who's achieving in those spheres. So there have been significant gains in terms of finishing high school and getting into colleges and universities, but finishing is under less than half finish, for example, whereas 74% of Anglo-European kids finish. So that's a disparity. And of course, Asian American students finish at higher levels than Anglo-American. And so we still have these disparities, and I worry about them. And I think that one of the things we could do in our binational region, but I'm a lone voice, I think, on this, is look for ways to harmonize more our school systems and our curriculum. We function in parallel, and I'm involved on a couple of foundation boards that is trying to assure that in lower income first generation families, kids have access, right, to the same learning, the same tools, the same computers, the same science experiences, summer camps that affluent upper middle class American kids have. And I think we need to do that within the border region as well, so that people are better equipped and more self-confident so that they can finish. I'm not sure I'm going where you wanted me to go, but what I will say to you is I think there's a growing comfort in the younger generation with living in a binational region. And so I think you've demonstrated this with Innovadora. So I think the investment ultimately has to be in the youth, in the schools, and in shared cultural and educational experiences that will equip kids to go on to universities or go into technical careers and contribute to the region's prosperity in the future.
I know that you have been many times in Europe, even that you're a friend of many people of the royalty. What did you saw in Europe now? What did you learn from this new experience that you just get from your recent trip?
Well, I've had 2 or 3 trips in the last 15 months, year, as you know, in Sweden, the UK, recently Italy. But I know a fair amount about what's going on in the United Kingdom and in Sweden because I'm affiliated with universities over there. And I'm not happy with what I'm about to say to you. When my parents immigrated to this country, Sweden was what, 5-6 million people with 500 years of shared history, pursued the same religion, had no social diversity. In Sweden, it was socially diverse if you had a Finn or a Norwegian as a neighbor, okay? Today, Sweden is having, because of its, in part because of its liberal policies to accept, refugees and political migrants, a sort of complete transformation in terms of social diversity. So that you have cities like Malmo where 50% of the population come from the Middle East or from Africa or from the Baltic region, and they're having problems with social and religious diversity. It's also true in the Stockholm area. So in a country like Sweden, which was very, very liberal and outspoken in its criticism of the United States, right? And Don Jose, you and I are close enough in age, that the civil rights movement, the women's movement, the anti-war movement, and Sweden was very moralistic. Well, now Sweden is attempting, like we are in the Americas, to live with social diversity. And they're finding it's hard. And they don't know how to do it. And there's a cultural dimension to it, but even a public policy. That said, per capita, this is the God's truth, Stockholm, Tel Aviv, and the Silicon Valley are the three most entrepreneurial, innovative regions in the world. So Swedes, even with a social democracy, have embraced a form of capitalism and, venture investment and entrepreneurship, just as Israel has, and compete globally, right, with California and other places across the United States. But similar to the United States and our cross-border region, they are experiencing greater degrees of wealth and poverty, disinterest among traditional students in math and science when they used to be really excited. And so these are global issues that locales everywhere are having to deal with. I don't know if I've responded well to your question.
I love the examples that you're saying about the cities that are like avant-garde in entrepreneurship, because that's my dream, that we could be like named in these examples.
Well, we see San Diego is, and my goal is for San Diego Tijuana to be in that, because we're always in that top 5 or 10, but always just as San Diego. And you try to explain how many engineers from Mexico are working at Qualcomm or working at Thermo Fisher, and how much innovation is happening at the border. And it will happen. It will happen, Claudia.
So Mary, how do you see the future?
Well, I'm very heartened by the global character of culture. I really, and I've been in Italy and France. I've been in the Middle East, and the generation. My son is 47, so he's not quite there. It's really the 20 and 30 somethings and the little ones. Everybody's listening to Bollywood music, to Latin American music, to American rap, to, old Swedish and German and English folk songs. Do you see what I mean? That there's a kind of a global culture that people are growing with, that they understand comes from different places than their own specific home. And so that makes me very optimistic. Food. I'm Don Jose, somebody said, if you were to write a novel about your month in Italy, what would you title it? I don't know if the listeners are going to understand what I'm about to say. The title of my book would be Finding Kimchi in Florence, because my daughter-in-law is Korean. And so my grandchildren are, hybrid kids, and they love kimchi, that spicy cabbage that you eat with everything. And yes, they like pasta and burgers and steaks, but they started complaining. We were there 4 weeks. After a few days, there must be a Korean market somewhere. And would you believe, we had a morning when my son drove us into Florence, and the 4 little kids and I went to the Uffizi, right? 600 years old, Catholic, religious, painting, wonderful history, while he found 2 Korean markets in Florence and filled up the back of the car with kimchi and spices and other things. And that symbolized to me the world we're living in. My kids weren't repudiating Catholic or Italian or traditional culture. My granddaughter wanted to go back to the Uffizi. She liked it so much, but she also, damn it, wanted to have some kimchi in addition to pasta. So, Claudia, when you ask me, I think this merging, do you see what I mean, of music and entertainment and food, and also the mix of populations that you see in the schools, right? Particularly on the US side, children are growing up not disliking others. It's, do you know what I mean? They sort of celebrate and enjoy one another. So if we can also teach them, and we can also create paths to opportunities to work and spend time in binational or multinational settings, I think that's the hope.
When Claudia told you about the 160,000 people that cross every day the border, we used to say that Mexicans were coming to work into San Diego, but they are not Mexican because they are American citizens.
Right.
So 80% are American citizens. So instead of being Mexicans coming to work to San Diego, it's Americans who goes there to sleep and come to work to their country. And that's a fantastic change of mentality. We call it Tijuana pijama.
Yeah.
We are sleeping over there. So, and many other things we have in Tijuana and San Diego, excuse me, in Tijuana and Rosarito, we have the largest community of expat Americans living out of their country.
Right.
It's a very interesting phenomenon. It's very interesting what's happening. And I intend to approach this community and to talk to them and to try to make them part of the largest community.
Absolutely. You know, I want to go back to my early point about stereotypes that I made with Claudia. It would be very easy to say to you, Don Jose, oh, but of course it's cheaper. They can have a maid, they can have a cook, they can afford. I don't think that's the only reason. And I think we need to understand. I think it's what I've just been talking with you about. I think it's about food and music and color and dance and climate. Do you see what I mean? And it also has an economic benefit. So people choose to live where they feel comfortable and have joy, not just where it's affordable. And so there is much about the culture, I think, that attracts people, just as, you know, hard-nosed entrepreneurs probably are going to be happier in San Diego than they are in Minnesota or Iowa. You know, it's a lifestyle. So I think we've underplayed the lifestyle benefits, and we've tended to see it, you know, define things purely in economic terms. But that's just a comment on my part. And I think it's really worthy of exploration.
So I have a question from the people that is hearing you. And her name is Jeannie. She says, can you talk a little bit about digital divide between Tijuana and San Diego?
Well, I think the digital divide is one of the biggest threats. And it's not just having computer, it's a mindset. Now, I'm a sociologist, I'm not a neuroscientist, but I've been close enough to the engineers and the neuroscientists who are developing things like artificial intelligence and robotics and other things to know that how we humans interact with advanced technology, right, means we have to have different kinds of mental maps, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, when I was a girl, I got rewarded because I could memorize things. Because you had to go to the library or to a dictionary to find information. And if you could keep a lot of stuff in your head, you were considered smart. Well, nowadays, smart is knowing how to find and integrate data to solve problems. That's a different kind of education. It's teamwork. It's problem solving from day one. It's not memorizing the periodic table, or 100 words in Spanish necessarily. And so I think the digital divide is not just about access, right, to computers and tools. It's about those who are privileged to be educated in more of a problem-solving, analytical learning experience starting young, like 6, and throughout the lifespan. And that's where I think the biggest divide is. We can give all schools computers, iPhones, But if kids are interacting with teachers or parents who still think 2 and 2 is 4, and who don't know how to do differential, I don't know if I'm making sense, Claudia. So I think there's almost a transformation that is going to be happening in education. And actually, I'm on a foundation board that's made a significant investment in a partnership with an entity called the Digital Promise. And it's not about computers and it's not about equipment. It's about how do you use your brain knowing you can access all kinds of good stuff in this digital universe.
Yeah, you got the right answer for her. She's happy with that.
Oh, good. Thank you, Dean.
Mary, we finished our time. We can be like chatting with you like for 3 hours. We really appreciate your time, which is the most value of all the things that you are saying. Your time, we really appreciate it. And Mr. Gallicot is going to ask you your final thoughts and to say goodbye to this program. Mr. Gallicot?
Yes, it's a delight to talk to you. You are wiser than ever, and you are a beautiful lady that I love. And really, I want you to tell something to the young people that are listening and will listen this program. So please give us an advice. What we do with these new generations, and what, since you are also a teacher, what they should do to be successful.
So my generation got a medical degree or an engineering degree or became the president of the bank, and they were set for life. This generation is probably every 5 years, the rules of the game, how we live, right? How we deal with climate, how we get our energy and electrical power, who is our enemy in the world, who isn't our friend in the world. It's changing. And the technology that you have access to. So I say to young people, be ready to learn across the lifespan. Don't be afraid to reinvent yourself. And I once wrote an essay projecting my grandson, who I predict might be an architect, but ends up leading a foundation that does, it's a fantasy, right? That does developmental aid in Africa to build schools and museums. But it's philanthropy, but he's an architect. And I go through how every 5 or 10 years he goes back to school or he makes a shift, he moves into a new field. So your portfolio is always growing and changing. And you shed some of the old knowledge, but you're always acquiring new. And so I've been a strong advocate, as the two of you know, for places like Park and Market and universities like SETIs and UCSD to have strong lifelong learning programs in the arts, in culture, in writing, in engineering, in medicine, because those fields just change and change. We live in a global changing world. Be ready for it.
Thank you very much, Mary. Thank you very much, Mr. Jose Gallicot, Gaby Palazuelos. always in the backstage. Y pues nos vemos la siguiente semana. Muchas gracias por estar con nosotros. Nos vemos el siguiente jueves a las 6 de la tarde aquí en el webinar A Tiempo y Bien en la temporada 5 y vamos a estar con James Clark, que va a ser nuestro siguiente invitado. Thank you very much, Mary. Thank you to all of you.
Have a lovely evening, everyone.
Tijuana.
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 Tijuana
Tijuana is innovation and manufacturing at a world-class level.
Is skilled and high-tech industrial labor.
Is San Diego's business and economic partner.
is the gateway to a smarter border, is a dynamic destination, and our gateway to Mexico.
Is diverse and inclusive.
Is binational and bicultural.
Is a hub of art and cultural innovation.
Is surprising, a place that will open your eyes.
Is a treasure trove of wonderful food, beer, and wine.
Is part of San Diego's binational community.
Is social innovation and philanthropy.
Is San Diego's innovative, dynamic, and vibrant collaborator.
Tijuana is an open and plural society, a cluster of many communities that welcomes everyone.
Tijuana is our friend, our neighbor, and our partner.
Tijuana.
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 Tijuana is the future.
Tijuana.